Good morning. We'll go ahead and get started with the CI Chit Chat. Got a couple different faces than Mitchell here, so we'll go ahead and have some new introductions. We've both been on the CI Chit Chat before, but happy to be on. Mitchell's actually traveling across the pond in England here this week, doing some diplomatic work. So here to join us, Alex and Brad here. So Alex, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, and I'll
Yeah.
go ahead and introduce myself as well.
Yep, Alex Klopfenstein. I'm the director of strategic initiatives here. So my main role is to just make sure that things that we have starting new coming in, they're all aligned and that we're just making sure that things are flowing nicely and internally and then out into externally as well. And then also just part of the hiring process as well. So just put a plug in for just if you've gotten any emails or know of anybody that's looking to make some off the farm income. We are hiring some sales positions and some different stuff. So just be looking for some of that stuff from us from our marketing team as well. Um, but yeah, I was actually in education for about 11 or 12 years before this, and then made the move back to the ag industry where that's kind of where my family is rooted. My dad was he got out of high school in 79, so the early 80s weren't ideal to get into the farming. So I'm the second generation out, but my grandpa still has a farm. I go help him every once in a while out there. So yeah, Brad, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd almost say, yeah, do you really have an outsider's perspective since it's technically you've been around it your whole life, right? So it's good to have that though. That's for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah. Is great. So yeah, Brad McDonald, COO, been with Continuum since 2020. So yeah, basically started down this regen path, kicking and screaming, knowing Mitchell through family friends, and I have my own farm here in Northeast Iowa, and it's a century farm as well. So definitely conventional practices run deep in where I'm from in Delaware County. So yeah, definitely very interesting path as far as not your traditional path of trying to look for different ways to get creative on the farm. It was mostly I'm just curious to see this space and to see if I can better practices to try and reduce erosion and see if all the good things about regen practices actually are true. So I would definitely say, as far as in continuum ag, I'm more of a skeptic than I'd say most when it comes to regen practices. But specifically with the CI Chit Chat, now this brand new world of CI is upon us, and trying to navigate those waters, it can be very confusing. A lot of misinformation out there, and a lot of uncertainty. We don't claim to have all the answers, but certainly we are at the forefront of trying to figure it out and do what's right for the farmer, to be able to navigate these waters, and then just understand that it's going to be a collaborative effort. No one wins if we don't work together. So it's just very important that the farmer understands that, and then also the companies that have the most to gain, the biofuel industry, to be able to understand. So we'll start off just basically how Mitchell starts off. Just kind of give a brief overview of CI and what it entails. And basically, from a 10,000 foot level, think of CI, carbon intensity is your carbon footprint. Everyone has one. Farmers have one. Every industry has one. And so, what constitute your carbon footprint is what kind of emissions are you contributing into the atmosphere. That's the general sense of it. So the ethanol industry has been directly incentivized through the Inflation Reduction Act to lower their carbon footprint to make biofuels. Specifically, if you think of ethanol, there's a carbon footprint that's associated with producing a gallon of ethanol. And that comes from how are they creating the product. They call it a scope 3 emission, where if you buy the grain itself has a carbon footprint, and that counts toward the ethanol company's overall carbon footprint. Then the electricity used to run the plants, and basically the emissions that are going into the atmosphere, that also contributes to their overall carbon footprint. And so they're actually trying to put numbers to what that carbon footprint is. And when it comes to trying to understand getting paid for that, they're actually giving a direct incentive to try and lower it below a certain amount. And so specifically for an ethanol company, 50 is the CI score. That's the magic number. If a ethanol company gets below, or a biofuel company rather, gets below 50, that means they are now eligible for tax credits starting in 2025. So for every gallon of biofuel produced in 2025, they have the eligibility to reduce their carbon footprint and apply for tax credits. So come tax season 2026, to pay for 2025, they have the ability to offset their tax liability. And on top of that, they're able to generate what's called tax credits that can be sold on the open market. And so think of it from just anyone's perspective. They have the opportunity, if they're able to change their practices and reduce their score, they can now have the option to not even have to pay taxes. It's a pretty amazing, awesome thing. And then also sell it on top of that, the tax credits, to the tune of, if they get down to zero, they can earn $1 in tax credit for every single gallon that's produced. Now, it's very difficult to go from 50 to zero, but it's still a possibility. And that's where the incentive is. If they are able to figure out how to get to a carbon neutral, which that's what the hot term that everyone talks about as far as getting to a zero, which basically you're offsetting all emissions that you're putting in the atmosphere. The product you're making actually should have zero impact on what's actually being produced. So that means $1 a gallon. There's 23 billion gallons of biofuel produced in the United States every year. So the opportunity is massive, more than any other initiative that's ever been made or proposed. $23 billion worth of tax credits being thrown at the biofuel industry to change their practices and get to carbon zero. So basically what that means to the farmer is, since the farmer has the grain that's contributing toward that carbon footprint, we can have a direct impact to help the ethanol plants or the biofuel manufacturers lower their score by us lowering our score. So in a practical sense, how does that happen from a farmer? It's going back to what I was talking about at the very beginning of this call, is the regen practices. That we utilize what's called the GREET model to actually understand what our score is. And the three big movers when it comes to the GREET model, it's cover crops, no-till, and manure to offset synthetic fertilizers. So if you think of our carbon footprint, if we're utilizing synthetic fertilizers, then we have to count that whatever the carbon footprint was of that product that we put on our farms as part of our carbon footprint. So essentially, if you are able to do those three things, you are able to drastically lower your carbon footprint. And so the average score for a bushel of corn, for example, is 29. That's what the model has suggested as far as in the model itself. And so if we're able to lower below 29, you're doing better than what the model would suggest. Therefore, theoretically, you should be helping the ethanol plant lower their score below 50. For example, I mentioned that I was a conventional farmer, just switched to regen. In my conventional crop, I was 25. So even I was doing full till synthetics, and I was still below the 29 threshold. So theoretically, I could have been in the money even with my conventional practices. It just so happened that my location and my yield allowed me to be below that 29 threshold. But then I started doing cover crop no-till, and the last couple of years I've been in negative, even a -4. And what that means as far as the value to the ethanol industry was over $450 per acre. So again, the amount of money that's being thrown at this is quite tremendous. So I know I've spent the first few minutes here talking through it. Alex, I just wanted to give a general recap. Anything to add as far as your thoughts and that I might have missed here?
No, just, I mean, obviously you've been through that journey of the transition of seeing both sides of things and all that stuff, but just talk a little bit more about like CI certification and where we come in and how that gets to that point.
That's right. Yep. So it's not enough just to do the practices, and really I liken it to the organics. That whole industry, most people are very familiar with what that looks like. And there's different tiers to organic, and you can see them in the aisle of Whole Foods as far as what that looks like. and all of them have different rules as far as what practices constitute organic. The same thing is going to be the case when it comes to your CI score. The practices that occur is what's going to drive your CI score. But just because you do the practices doesn't mean that you have now an official CI certified crop. You have to go through the process of certification. Just like an organic farmer, I could do all of the practices that allow me to qualify as an organic farmer, and I could sell an organic product on the open market for a premium. That doesn't count unless I actually go through the process of getting certified. I have to have the stamp of organic certified. That's exactly what we believe is going to happen here. And that's why we offer the path for farmers to actually get that certification. We're going to be collecting your data, but the farmer owns their data up until the very end. And so you get to, as a farmer, you're not signing up for a program like a carbon credit program. The thing that's I have to make very clear, this is not a carbon credit program. You are actually producing a product that just has a CI score associated with it. You are not generating carbon credits like your general carbon credit program. So therefore you get to control, if I certify my crop, I get to control where that goes and basically try to negotiate on behalf of myself of what premiums I get based on the score that I'm able to provide. So it's a brand new product almost, if you liken it like that, that I now have a CI certified crop, very similar to if you're producing an organic crop, that is a totally different product than if you were just doing conventional practices. So I think it's a good analogy, at least, Alex, to think of it as an organic crop, and we have to utilize the practices and get the certification in order for it to count.
Yeah. Yeah. And then one other thing maybe to hit on is just, the cost of that, and then the upside of what you mentioned. In your case, it could be this amount per acre,
Yeah.
but just what is the cost of it right now? And I know that we have some of that changing, so that might be something to mention here as well too.
Yep, great point. And so, if you think of it, there is a huge risk reward here. So this is a brand new thing. It starts in 2025. It's never happened before. That's where a lot of this uncertainty is. But again, the upside is very tremendous. And so it's going to come down to, are you guys, or if I'm a farmer trying to decide whether it's worth certifying my crop, it's a $5 per acre risk until July 1. So for $5 per acre until July 1, you can go ahead and sign up through Continuum Ag and certify your crop. After July 1, we are bumping it up to $7, and I can kind of go into the reasoning for that. But let's look at the upside though as well. So like I said, having a negative score, I was actually providing over $450 per acre to the ethanol plant. That does not mean that me as a farmer, I would get $450. What that would look like is we have to see what the costs are going to be associated with the ethanol plant to actually go through their process of certification, because that, remember, them as a plant, they have their own CI score that they're going to have to get certified, and that's what's actually going to get handed to the IRS in order to get generated tax credits. So there's a lot of uncertainty as far as what that looks like. And basically what it comes down to is no ethanol plant is going to come out today and say, Brad, if you do those practices, I'll pay you $100. That doesn't exist. So anyone who's saying out there, hey, we know exactly what a farmer is going to get paid and it's not worth it, no one knows. No one's willing to commit to what that looks like. However, again, the upside is tremendous, and so the incentive is there for us to pursue that, and the ethanol industry understands that clear as day. We are talking to a lot of the CEOs of these plants. We've talked to over 120, I believe, at this point, and they all understand they're going to have to do something in this space. The question is how and when. And so that's where the uncertainty is. And so right now, the buy-in, if you like it, if you're a casino guy, you're putting $5 on the table. and the odds are still very good that something is going to come out of it. And whether it's CI or any of these other programs, we just firmly believe that this is the right thing to do. It is a good thing to get your crop certified, and then wherever the chips may lie, we will be able to react to that and be able to understand, okay, this is where I can get the most return for my certification. What that looks like and where that is, there's all that uncertainty with it, but we firmly believe that having a certified crop sitting in the bin, you are positioning yourself much better than if you didn't. And so to me, as a farmer, I mean, I made that risk myself as far as, is it worth the $5 risk to be able to have a certified crop sitting in the bin and then try to market the best I can to get the highest premium? To me, that's exactly where the industry is going. That's what the market is demanding. And so I believe that no doubt I'll be able to get my $5 back, the upside is just tremendous beyond that. So Alex, that was a long-winded way to say $5 now, $7 July 1 is
Yeah.
the answer there. So
Yep. So just under a week there
yep, that's
for
right.
that change. So yeah, that's a great synopsis of everything. I think that's good just to kind of start at the beginning, go all the way back to where through what could happen. Obviously still some uncertainty with some things, but like you said, we believe that putting your money down, I mean, it's worth it with the upside of things that could happen. So I think next
Yeah.
let's just get into some of the questions that have come, and then so I'll just kind of read them out loud to you, and then you can go ahead and answer those. So
Yeah,
this
that
one's
sounds
from
great.
Rick. Is there one universally accepted standard for grading farming practices for a carbon intensity score?
Yeah, so I mentioned very briefly that there's something called the Greek model, and it actually was developed by the Department of Energy. And that's what's being under debate right now from the IRS as far as being the official used model. And so there has been some uncertainty as far as what path it's going to take. And so I think what a lot of people have in their mind is that they're conflating this 45Z tax credit, the tax credit that I've been talking about this whole time, with the sustainable aviation fuel tax credit, which is an entirely different thing associated with a entirely different tax code called 40B. In 40B, they just came out with the rules saying it's a check the box. You do these three practices and you qualify for just a 10-point reduction. And it's not very favorable to farmers. And a lot of farmers looked at that and said, well, not interested. 45Z, not worth it. Not worth my $5 because a 10-point reduction when I should be getting a 30-point reduction, that's ridiculous. But what we firmly believe is that the 45Z tax credit is going to be directly associated with the CI score that's being produced by the GREET model that was developed by the Department of Energy. We'll see for sure whether that is the case. And certainly when they do come out with the official rules with 45Z, there's going to be a period of input where we as farmers, let's say they do come back and say, nope, we're going to do a check the box, three practices, 10-point reduction. We can raise a lot of noise saying that's not right. And we need to be compensated for the actual score. It's not okay if me, Brad McDonald on McDonald Farm, is sitting at a negative score and you're only going to comp me 10 points when I should be getting 35 points. So really, that's what we need to be going for as far as the actual practices contributing to an actual score that the farmer should be compensated for, not just a blanket payment. And so we'll see what the rules actually come out with there, Alex. But the GREET model is the one that they've been pointing to. Again, it's all internal U.S. government. And Vilsack himself has said that the 40B rules is a placeholder. So the check the box out of his mouth, he says that that is a placeholder. And we believe that's in lieu of the 45Z working with the GREET model, not just the check the box practices.
That's good info there. Let's keep, we've got about 10 minutes left here, so let's keep hammering through some.
Yeah.
This one's from Roy. Does native grass sequester more carbon than cool season grasses?
Yeah, so I'm assuming that's referring to cover crop. And so according to the Greek model itself, it is that's the one generating the official score at the end. And they do not differentiate between types of cover crop. So when they ask the question as far as what cover crop do you plant, they don't even take that into consideration in driving your score. So really, that is up to the farmer as far as what's best for your operation. Don't be trying to navigate. Okay, well, should I plant this or this to try and chase a low CI score, because it's all going to count the same. Whether you're doing oats and winter kill or rye that grows and do relay with soybeans, it's all going to be counting the same. And so do what's best for your operation, I would suggest in that case, because the CI score itself will not be impacted.
Okay, this one's from Nathan. How to determine which company to select? And I'm not sure exactly what that is, but
It,
elaborate.
I'm going to go ahead and assume that they're probably talking to which company should I select to be selling to. And so I think that this is kind of important to kind of walk through as far as it's a biofuel tax credit. So the best thing to do would be to work directly with a biofuel company. Now, if you go ahead and call up your local ethanol company, for example, you might get a few different answers, and most of them are probably going to be negative. It depends who you talk to, but for example, the people who are actually taking the calls, the grain merchandisers, may not be in the know on this, and nor should they. They're not the decision maker of to see what the policy is for that ethanol plant to be interacting with CI certification. And so you might get an answer of never heard of it, don't know what you're talking about. Or at this point, I think a lot of them are starting to understand and have heard of it at least. But they may say, we were aware of it, but don't think that we're going to be participating. I can tell you that if you were to get on the phone with the CEOs of these companies, they are aware of it. They know that the money is tremendous, but there is that uncertainty. And so again, it's a how and when situation when you're talking with those guys. So as far as who to sell to, I think that's okay to kind of let the dust settle. But I do know that it would be better, or theoretically, you should assume that it would be better to work directly with ethanol companies if you have that capability, because you don't have anyone else. There's no third party to be working through. It just adds more complication. That said, not everyone has the ability to sell directly to an ethanol plant. And so working with your local co-ops or grain merchandisers, that still might be an option if they're forward thinking enough to figure out how to do it. And so even though there's that added complexity there, it's up to them as far as certainly everyone who's handling grain should have the capability to try to participate in this, and really the incentive is absolutely there to figure it out. So the official advice, unfortunately for that question, Alex, is not sure who to sell to, but theoretically you would want to be going directly to the biofuel companies because it just adds less complexity.
Yeah. All right. Another one here from Nate. If I get a CI score from the Iowa Pork Sustainability Program, is that enough?
So I think the key word there is score. So you can get your score from a number of different places. Continue Mag, we offer it. I guess Diana, you just put in the chat, get it for $25. Wholesale, it's $500 that we charge to get a CI score, but we offer codes to get that in discount. So you can actually get your score for $25. But certainly you can go directly, just type in Greek model and try and find the raw Excel that they're using and try and navigate to put in the information and get it pulled out. There's a whole bunch of, so that you said I Pork Association, I guess I'm not aware of that one, but there's a whole bunch of different places you can get a score. But just because you know your score, just because, and I call them preliminary scores, just because you know your preliminary score based on putting it into a model and getting a kickback, that doesn't count as certified. You have to actually go through the process. So it's actually for your $5, just to kind of go in depth of that, you work with a region success agronomist at Continue Mag or a dealer that you're working with that's associated with Continue Mag, a signed dealer with us. and they will be hand-holding you throughout the season to collect all of the data necessary to get certified. The last piece of data that is necessary is your yield data. So it's not even possible to get certified until we have that last piece of information of yield. So for my 2024 crop, if anyone's saying, hey, I can get you certified tomorrow, that's a bunch of malarkey, because you have to have all of the data in order to get certified. And so we do offer that as far as the Regen Success Agronomist, monthly check-ins, continually reaching out, making sure that, hey, we're staying on top of, do you have your planting data? Do you have your as applied maps? Do you have your field boundaries? All of those things are necessary, and it's very complex as far as to the amount of data needed to get this is quite a lift for the farmer. Let's put it that way. And so we try and walk through and handhold all farmers to be able to get that done. And yeah, as far as the score itself is worthless, honestly. The score doesn't get you anything. It just gives you a benchmark of where you can be. To actually make it real, to actually earn a premium, you have to have certification associated with your crop, not just a score.
Yeah, and one of the things with the score that we can do is kind of run some different scenarios and change some things. So then that way, when you're working with one of our sales agronomists, they could say, if you change just with this one practice, here's what could potentially happen to your score. So there's just some nice to play around with that and see how that number can change with some different things as well. Which, let's talk about one of those practices. We have another question here. I want to understand how tillage practices affect a CI score and what actually qualifies as no-till.
Yeah, so no-till in the greed model would be don't touch it. So as long as you're not turning any residue under, they do allow for, obviously, planting wouldn't count as a tillage practice, and also manure application if you're knifing it in, or any fertilizer application if you're knifing it in. That does not count as tillage. You're not actually turning under, theoretically, any residue. If you're turning under over 30%. That is where you would be qualified into conventional till. So basically, there's a grace period if you are turning stuff under, if you are touching it either in a strip till or a vertical till, and you are putting residue underneath, you have 30% wiggle room essentially. So if you think of right after harvest, the amount of residue that's sitting on top of your field, as long as you're keeping more than 70% out there by the time that you're planting next year, that should count as minimal till or reduced till. They're synonymous. So that's the way to think of it. As far as if you're going for no till, just don't touch it. If you want to stay in that minimal till, just think of it, okay, I got to keep more than 70% up or not turn more than 30% under. Otherwise, if you are turning more than 30% of your residue under, that would be conventional till.
Okay, I think we got time for one more here. I know we wanted
Great.
to touch on this one too, but everything we've been talking about up to this point has pretty much been with corn. So let's talk a little bit about soybean. Should I bother with low CI soy, or does the tax credit not reward it enough?
Yeah, so it just adds more of a complexity. So we had been hesitant to offer the soybeans just because of the added complexity with having a crushing plant be the middleman, right? But we still firmly believe that for your $5, the reward is still possible there. And so we are offering soybeans there. It's just we want to be upfront about it. We don't want to overpromise, underdeliver. Basically, it's a higher risk. So the reward, if you were at the casino, isn't the odds aren't as great as it is with corn if you're putting your $5 down. That being said, it's still one of the best bets you can possibly make in agriculture. I liken it to, I'm a high insurance guy, so like I pay $85 an acre on insurance, and I hope I don't collect. Like that's a good scenario for me. Pay the $400 bag of seed as opposed to the $200 bag of seed. There's no guarantee that the $400 bag of seed is going to actually out yield or have a higher ROI than the $200 bag of seed. Farmers are used to taking those risks all the time. And so for the corn, that obviously is the highest bet I would say to make as far as the highest reward associated with your $5. But that being said, the soybeans for the $5 is still more than I would say anything that I've seen out there in agriculture as far as the risk reward. So it's still, in my opinion, as a farmer, worth the $5 to be getting $5 certification on your soybeans, even with that added uncertainty and just complexity with a crushing plant in the middle.
All right, well, I think we're at time, so I don't think there was any other questions that came in from the chat today. So with that, I don't know if you want to wrap it up and wish everybody a great Tuesday.
Very good. Thanks, guys, for attending. Appreciate it.